A millionaire CEO's car broke down on a snowy night. But what she found inside a small-town garage changed her life forever. Before this story melts your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your city might be next in our stories. Let's get started. The snow drifted down in silent flakes, covering Vermont's pine-lined roads in silver dust. Inside her sleek black sedan, Olivia Bennett, the CEO, sat tapping the steering wheel impatiently. The dashboard clock blinked 9:43 p.m. Another meeting was delayed, another investor was waiting, and Christmas Eve was quietly slipping by without her noticing. Her assistant's voice buzzed through the Bluetooth, reminding her of tomorrow's charity gala. Olivia sighed. She had built an empire, yet tonight she felt more alone than ever. Success had bought her everything except time. A sharp sputter interrupted the silence. The sedan jerked, lights flickered, and the engine died mid-turn on a narrow, snowy road. Olivia, "No, not now," she muttered, hitting the steering wheel. The world outside was white, endless, and still. There was no signal on her phone. The irony stung. The woman who could connect the world couldn't even call for help in her own country's back roads. For the first time in years, she felt utterly powerless. Just as she felt utterly powerless, distant headlights appeared like hope breaking through the darkness. An old, dented tow truck rolled into view. The door creaked open, and through the window, she spotted a little girl curled up under a blanket, asleep in the passenger seat. A tiny Santa hat covered her head, glowing faintly under the cabin light. The person who came to her rescue was everything her world was not: rough, real, and carrying a tiny passenger. Ethan, in a thick flannel jacket and snow-dusted beanie, approached her car, holding a flashlight. "Need a hand, ma'am?" he asked in a warm voice, his tone casual but kind. Olivia blinked. He looked nothing like the people she dealt with. His hands were rough, but his eyes were steady and gentle. "Olivia, my car just died. I think the engine froze." Ethan knelt beside the front tire, peering under the hood. With a faint grin, "That's what happens when luxury meets Vermont weather." Olivia frowned, not used to people joking around her, but something in his tone was disarming. Then she spotted the little girl curled up under a blanket, asleep in the passenger seat of the tow truck. A tiny Santa hat covered her head, glowing faintly under the cabin light. The sight startled Olivia more than she expected. "Olivia," softly, "you brought your daughter?" Ethan, adjusting a wrench, couldn't leave her home alone. Single dad life. She wanted to see the Christmas lights on our way back. His voice carried no apology, only quiet truth. For a moment, Olivia forgot how expensive her car was. All she saw was a man who showed up when she needed help most, without expecting anything in return. The wind howled again through the trees. Ethan noticed Olivia shiver immediately. "You can sit in my truck if you want," he said. "It's warmer inside. Sophie won't mind." Olivia hesitated, but eventually followed, stepping into the tow truck's cabin, which smelled faintly of coffee and pine, the radio playing a soft Christmas tune. The breakdown wasn't the crisis. The crisis was Olivia's realization of everything she had traded for her success. The little girl, Sophie, stirred, blinked sleepily, and smiled at her. Sophie, whispering, "Hi. You're pretty." Olivia froze, caught off guard by the innocent warmth. She watched Ethan work outside through the frosted glass. His movements were deliberate and confident, the kind that came from years of fixing what others gave up on. She wondered how long it had been since someone had fixed anything for her without an invoice attached. A soft Christmas tune, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," filled the air from the radio. She listened, and her chest tightened. It had been years since that song meant anything. The real breakdown was not the car's alternator. It was the system of detachment Olivia had built around herself. She was the woman who could buy connection, yet felt closer to the stranger and his sleeping child than anyone in her contact list. Ethan, climbing back in, brushing snow from his shoulders. "Bad alternator, but I can get you running long enough to reach town," he said. "There's a diner about 10 miles down. They stay open all night for the holiday." Olivia, genuinely, "Thank you." Ethan, shrugging, "No thanks needed. You'd do the same." Olivia, "I don't think I'd know how." They drove slowly toward town, his truck leading the way. When they reached the diner, Ethan parked beside her, gesturing toward the glowing sign. "Ethan, they make good coffee," he said. "And the pie is famous." Olivia looked at him, then at the sleeping child in the truck. "Olivia, you should go home," she said quietly. Ethan, smiling, "It's Christmas Eve." "We will, after I know you're safe." Something about that statement made her heart ache in a way she couldn't name. From boardrooms and deadlines, her world instantly shifted to laughter and cocoa with strangers. Inside the diner, the warmth and scent of cinnamon hit her instantly. Ethan ordered 2 coffees while Sophie curled up in a booth with a cookie the waitress brought over. Olivia sat across from him, still dazed by how quickly her world had shifted. "Olivia, you know," she said, "people don't usually stop like that anymore." Ethan looked up, his eyes kind. "Ethan, they do. You just stopped noticing." The simplicity of his words cut deeper than any business advice she'd ever received. For once, she didn't have a reply. As they sat there, the storm outside eased into silence. Sophie hummed along to the jukebox. Olivia felt something strange. Peace. Not the kind bought by success, but the kind that sneaks up quietly when life forces you to stop. She watched Ethan laugh with his daughter, noticing the way he listened when Sophie spoke. This was the kind of life that wasn't measured by earnings or headlines, but by moments like this. For the first time in years, Olivia Bennet, the woman who had everything, didn't want the night to end. The waitress informed them they could take the car to Ethan's garage just outside of town for the full repair. As the garage door groaned open, revealing a cozy space, Olivia stepped inside hesitantly, brushing snow from her coat. She had been in countless luxury showrooms across the world, but none of them had ever felt like this. Imperfect, small, but deeply alive. The garage, filled with the faint glow of haphazardly strung Christmas lights and the smell of cocoa, was not a workplace, it was a home. Olivia stepped inside hesitantly, brushing snow from her coat. She looked around at the scattered tools and scattered toys. A small chalkboard had notes written in a child's handwriting, "Daddy, fix Mrs. Green's car today." "Olivia, you have an assistant, I see." Ethan, laughing softly. "Yeah, best one I ever had, though she eats most of the cookies before they're done." His voice carried the easy confidence of a man who'd made peace with life's imperfections. Sophie climbed down from the counter, holding a star-shaped cookie with pink frosting. Sophie shyly offered it to Olivia. Olivia, unused to kindness without motive, took a bite. It was too sweet and unevenly baked, but it tasted like something real. Olivia, sipping cocoa from a chipped mug, "You two really love Christmas?" Ethan, without looking up, working with precision, "It's not about presents. It's about people. The boat slowing down long enough to be grateful." Olivia, "I used to love it, too, before work became everything." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and for once, she didn't correct herself. Ethan tightened a bolt, then glanced over his shoulder. "Work's important," he said gently. "But so is living." He then added a line that hung heavy in the air, saying more than words. "Maybe, but even 1,000 people can't fill an empty room." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind that sinks deep. The darkness outside was about to reveal the deeper, shared darkness inside both their hearts. Suddenly, a crack of thunder made the lights flicker, then everything went black. The heater went out, and the garage fell silent except for the wind. "Ethan, power's out." "Happens a lot around here." He quickly lit candles, one by one. Soon, the small garage glowed in warm, golden light, flickering across the walls. Sophie, clapping her hands, "It's like magic." After they finished their cocoa, Sophie climbed into her dad's lap, whispering something in his ear before falling asleep against his chest. That sight hit Olivia harder than she expected. It was so tender and simple. Ethan carefully carried Sophie to a small couch and covered her with a blanket. When he turned back, his voice was softer. "Ethan, softly, she's all I've got. Her mom passed away when she was 3. Every Christmas we light a candle for her." Olivia, whispering, "I'm sorry." Ethan, shrugging gently, "It's okay. Grief's just love with nowhere to go." Those words lingered, glowing like the candlelight around them. Olivia envied his strength, the kind that came from surviving, not just winning. For the first time, she talked, really talked. She told him about her own parents passing too soon, about burying herself in work to outrun loneliness, and how success became her armor. Ethan just listened, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, Ethan looked at her with steady eyes. "Ethan, maybe you were never running from loneliness. Maybe you were just waiting for someone to understand it." The simplicity of that statement disarmed her. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The storm outside began to fade, but the quiet storm in their hearts was just finding resolution. The simplicity of Ethan's truth disarmed her. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No judgment, no pity. Just then, the radio sputtered back to life with a Christmas classic, Silent Night. "Ethan, looks like even the radio's trying to remind us what night it is." Olivia, laughing softly for the first time all evening. "You really think Christmas still means something?" "Ethan," he looked at her with steady eyes. "I think it's the one time a year we're all allowed to believe again, even if it's just for one night." Olivia, her throat tightening, "I'd forgotten what that feels like." "Ethan, then remember it," he said simply. They sat there in silence, sipping cocoa. The warmth from the candles wrapped around them like a quiet embrace. She looked at him, rough hands from work, his face tired but kind. He looked nothing like the people in her world, yet somehow she felt closer to him than anyone she'd ever known. For the first time in years, she wasn't calculating. She wasn't performing. She was simply present. The storm might have killed the power, but in that small candlelit garage, something else had come alive. When the clock struck midnight, Ethan whispered, "Merry Christmas." Olivia smiled back, her voice barely above her breath. "Merry Christmas, Ethan." The world outside was still and silent. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, deadlines, meetings, or reality. But tonight she didn't care, because in that tiny garage, surrounded by warmth and the hum of something unspoken, Olivia Bennett had finally found a reason to stop. The CEO woke up, not to a five-star hotel, but on a small couch, wrapped in a blanket shared by a little girl. Morning sunlight filtered through the frosted windows, painting soft golden patterns across the dusty floor. Olivia blinked awake, realizing she hadn't slept this peacefully in years. She sat up slowly. Outside, Ethan was already working by her car, quiet and focused. He looked up with his easy smile. "Ethan, morning, city girl. Coffee." "Olivia, you fixed it." The engine purred perfectly. Ethan, wiping his hands, "Yeah. Turns out it just needed a little patience and care. Funny how most things do." His words hung in the air, warmer than the coffee. Olivia stared at him for a moment, realizing he wasn't just talking about the car. Sophie came running, carrying a small paper star she'd made. "Sophie, Miss Olivia, can you help me put it on the tree?" Seen, together, Olivia guided Sophie's hand to place the star at the very top. The light caught the tinfoil edges, making it shine brighter than any ornament Olivia had ever seen. Ethan, watching them, "I think that tree just got its first real wish." Olivia, "And what's that?" Ethan, "For you to believe in Christmas again." Olivia looked around the small garage, the chipped paint, the crooked lights, and realized it felt more like home than her penthouse ever had. Hours later, Olivia stood in her office overlooking the city, where the annual charity gala glittered in gold and champagne. She was supposed to give a speech about success, but the words felt hollow now. She looked at her reflection, perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect emptiness. Here is the highly engaging script for Segment 9, written without subheadings and focusing on the strong mini-hook, the major twist reveal, and the final cliffhanger. Transition from Segment 8, Olivia is looking at her perfect emptiness reflection in her office. The CEO made a choice that nobody in her world would understand. She traded gold and champagne for flour and firelight. Olivia looked at her reflection one last time, then smiled softly and took off her heels. "Olivia," to her assistant, "tell them something came up. Something more important." Without another word, she grabbed her coat, a small wrapped box, and walked out into the falling snow. Back at the small garage, Ethan was closing up for the night when he heard a familiar car pull in. He turned, eyebrows raised, as Olivia stepped out. "Ethan, you again. I thought CEOs had better parties than this." Olivia, holding up the box, "They do. But none worth missing this for." Ethan hesitated, warmth creeping up his neck. Sophie ran out, squealing. Twist reveal. Olivia knelt, opening the box. Inside were toys, cookies, and 3 handmade stockings. Olivia, this one's yours, handing Sophie the tiny stocking with her name stitched in gold thread. And this one's for you, giving Ethan one with crooked embroidery that clearly wasn't store-bought. Ethan, smiling, turning it over in his rough hands. You made these. Olivia, shyly, I had help from YouTube. Olivia rolled up her sleeves. Her polished hands were now dusted with flour instead of diamonds. They shared a dinner of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and cocoa that Sophie insisted on pouring. Ethan, to new friends. Olivia, to real Christmas, she added, clinking hers softly against his. Later, when Sophie fell asleep by the fireplace, the glow from the candles painted soft halos around them. Olivia, whispering, You know, I used to think Christmas was just another business opportunity. Now I think it's the only thing that ever felt real.